This was inevitable. It finally happened. Pro Wrestling Sheet and Fightful.com both confirmed with WWE this week that an on-screen talent who is not a member of the roster, so not a wrestler, I assume not a manager, probably a referee or an announcer, a backstage interviewer. If they're considered on-screen talent, it would have to be one of those categories. Recently tested positive for CV. Pro Wrestling Sheet says that according to sources, the person went out to dinner with friends who work in the healthcare industry following the last set of tapings, which included WrestleMania 36. So they did work WrestleMania. They did work the WrestleMania tapings. But I'm struck by the part of the sentence that says the person went out to dinner with friends during a pandemic. You know, Bill Engvall has his Here's Your Sign comedy routine, pointing out the stupidity that he sees every day. There's your sign, right there. So after their lovely dinner together, I certainly hope it was a lovely night out at the local restaurant. The person began, or wherever they had dinner, the person began feeling symptomatic. They got tested, and they tested positive for the disease. So they went into quarantine right away, and supposedly they have been cleared of the virus. This past week, they were officially cleared of the virus. Now, WWE released the following statement. It said, a WWE employee has tested positive. We believe this matter is low risk to WWE talent and staff as the individual and a roommate became symptomatic in the days following exposure to two people working in acute healthcare on the evening of March 26th, after WWE's TV production on a closed set was already completed. The employee had no contact with anybody from WWE since being exposed to those two individuals, is doing well, and made a complete recovery. The Fightful report does not include the infected person's name, even though I guess the person agreed, internally to allow their name to be used in that internal memo, which Fightful saw a copy of. And if Fightful knows the name of the person, has chosen not to release it, not to make that name public, I don't think it's any of our business anyway, so long as the people who work for the company are made aware of who it is or just aware of the situation. That's really all that matters. I mean, I don't need to know the person's name. None of us need to know the person's name. Fightful says that they heard back from talent across all of the brands about this memo that WWE sent out. Obviously, some were unhappy with the work environment there. One person, though, stated to Fightful that they didn't fear the illness, and they were willing to work because they need to work in order to, in their mind, justify what they're being paid. Now, I said this weeks ago, it was only a matter of time before somebody in the company tested positive. It's only a matter of time before one of the talents tests positive. And when that happens, this company is going to have a very big problem on their hands. After Vince McMahon changed plans very suddenly this week and decided that instead of taping multiple shows at once, weeks in advance, which would have been the smart move, they would instead be going live every week, starting with Raw tomorrow night. This is the statement that WWE, I have to read this to you. I tweeted this out last night. I have to read this. This is the statement that WWE gave to ESPN about resuming live shows this week. We believe it is now more important than ever to provide people with a diversion from these hard times. We are producing content on a closed set with only essential personnel in attendance following appropriate guidelines while taking additional precautions to ensure the health and wellness of our performers and staff. As a brand that has been woven into the fabric of society, WWE and its superstars bring families together and deliver a sense of hope, determination, and perseverance. What a babbling brick of public relations bullshit. Takes one PR person to recognize PR speak from another person. That is the most PR sentences that I have ever read in my life. What a closing line. Woven into the fabric of society, You get 2 million viewers a week on TV. 2.5 on a good week. That stitching came apart a long time ago. Hope, determination, perseverance, and money. Don't forget about money. They left the money part out. Don't forget about money. But they bring families together. Remember that episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? When Will's father walks out on him again. Remember that whole scene? How come he don't want me, man? How come he don't want me, man? Remember that whole scene? One of the most emotional scenes in television history. If you listen closely, you could hear the actress who played Hillary crying off camera in the background during that scene. Who knew that all Uncle Phil had to do was put some WWE on TV to bring Will and his dad back together? It's too bad the talent can't be together with their families over Passover and Easter, the holidays, instead of flying to Orlando to get their temperature checked. So talents are going to be flying into Orlando now each week for Raw, SmackDown, NXT. They're all going to be airing live. The plan as of late Thursday, to show you how quickly things changed, was to tape multiple episodes, up to 4 or 5 episodes each, of Raw and SmackDown and NXT and 205 Live, which I can't believe is still going on. But I guess maybe they have international contract obligations. I have no idea why that show's even going on. To carry them at least through their Money in the Bank pay-per-view on May 10th. That was the plan. And a pay-per-view, by the way, that will no longer be taking place in Baltimore. I'll have more on that later. Then late Thursday came the news that all of their taping plans were being thrown out the window. It was all being discarded by Vince McMahon, who instead has elected to go live each week for all shows from the Performance Center, so it's business as usual. And people in the company were said to be shocked by the decision. Some people didn't mind it. Not everybody there is appalled by this. You got to imagine that there are talents who look at it and go, okay, fine, let's work. They may be of the mindset, let's work. But by and large, it sounds like a lot of people there were caught off guard by the decision. I can tell you, with my own 2 eyes and my ears, that I was watching an video interview that Kofi Kingston did from his home via Skype, I guess, with Muscle and Fitness on the Muscle and Fitness YouTube channel. He did this 18-minute interview and talked about, everything that's been going on and his training regimen and going vegan. And then his son popped up on camera. And, it's an interesting interview. And it went up on Thursday. I don't know when it was recorded, but it went up on Thursday, on the day that all of these decisions were being made. And when the idea of them going live, one of the hosts, who's a fan, brought up the fact that, well, I guess you guys are going to be going live now every week, and so is that hard with you having to fly, back and forth to Orlando, travel every week? Kofi, he didn't think that was going to be the case. He said, I would imagine that we're going to be taping a bunch of shows in advance, but he seemed totally oblivious, and maybe the decision wasn't made by that point, but he seemed to think, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to tape a whole bunch of shows at once. Well, someone send Kofi the memo and tell him to pack his bags. Now, the reason Vince McMahon may have made the call that he did, if you're wondering, well, why would he do this? Well, of course he's a greedy bastard. We already know that. Yeah, he's a businessman. So he's concerned about his business. Look, the guy just lost his ass on the XFL. How many hundreds of millions of dollars did he pump into the XFL? And now that's shit the bed through no fault of his own. But I'm sure he's more than a little concerned about his finances right now. And the health of his company, the health of his business. But Meltzer was reporting that the television contracts that WWE has with both NBC Universal and with Fox call for a certain number of taped shows per year. So X number of shows that can be taped each year. Now for Raw, the number is said to be 3, which was originally going to be 1 show over Christmas week and 2 shows throughout the year during the European tours, when I guess they just, logistically, they can't go live. Technically, it's live to tape. Fox has a similar deal. And the belief is that is what Vince McMahon was hoping to guard against. He was hoping to guard against possibly violating their television contracts, because if they did, even though we have the situation that's going on is understandable. But if they breach their contracts, it would give both networks then the ability to either withhold money from them or find some way to not necessarily get out of the contracts, but alter them in some way. Now think about how reliant WWE is on that TV money, right? It's TV money and Saudi Arabia money. And who knows when they're going to be able to run Saudi Arabia again. And we don't know how far behind Saudi Arabia might be on payments. Remember, that was the issue before, too. They were late. They were behind on payments. I don't know if they're all caught up. They are so reliant on this money. As reliant as they are on that TV money, they can ill afford to lose out on that money. He doesn't want to give them an opening to say that you're in breach of contract in some way. So this may have a lot to do with why he is doing what he is doing. But what he is doing is very, very risky. And it's putting a lot of people in danger unnecessarily. You know, you look at it and it looks like profit over people. You could argue that if they do the right thing and they end up losing money, well then the company, I don't think the company would go under, but wrestlers could lose their jobs. They may have to downsize. They may have to cut a lot of people, fire employees. It's the same problem facing everyone all over the country right now, all over the world. People saying we have to go back to work. We need money. We need money to pay for food, to pay for rent. These are all valid concerns. I mean, I think everybody listening, if you're not going through it yourself, you probably have a friend or a family member who's going through the same situation right now. But if you go back to work and you operate as, business as usual, and you get sick, well, then you're not going to be working anyway. And neither will a lot of other people when things get shut down all over again. And then it takes longer for everybody to climb out of this hole. It's tough. There are arguments to be made on both sides. It's a tough thing. But, health is wealth. Without your health, you have nothing. And at a time when every other major sports, and this is the thing that gets me, every other major sports league, every other major form of entertainment is shut down. Even UFC. As stubborn as Dana White is, even UFC was forced, basically by their Disney overlords, and I think the state of California, to cancel its pay-per-view next weekend. Now, Dana White is setting up an island to hold fights. He's calling it Fight Island. This is a real thing that he's trying to set up. But even UFC was not immune to the pressure, and they had to cave, and they had to cancel their show. WWE continues to hold itself to a different standard than everybody else. And they're setting themselves up for a lot of pain if and when the time comes that somebody on that roster gets sick. And then gets other people sick when they're in there rolling around with them, not realizing that they're sick. AEW, they're still operating too, but at least they had some sense to tape weeks and weeks worth of material in advance. They're not running live. I don't know when the next time AEW is going to run live, but they did hours upon hours of tapings last week that will at least take them through much of the month of May. Vince McMahon, apparently he feels differently. Now, according to TMZ, the company already sent a memo out to talent explaining how to stay safe from CV, we'll call it. They will have medical staff screening each person, which is what they've been doing already anyway. They'll have medical staff screening each person before they can enter the performance center. Their temperatures will be taken before they can enter, which of course is not, it's not as if, well, you take somebody's temperature and they don't have a fever that you must be okay. You must not be sick. We know that's not the case. That's only one small part of it. But that's their fail-safe, I guess. We'll take your temperature before you can enter the performance center. And then once you're inside, the memo says, they encourage everybody to wear a face mask. And they say if you can't get one, then make one. And in this memo, they explain how to make one by sewing fabric, by wearing a bandana, or by ripping off an old t-shirt sleeve. But they make it very clear that masks should come off when the cameras are rolling. So we don't want all these wrestlers going on TV wearing these t-shirt sleeves. looking all Mickey Mouse out there. Roman Reigns, at least, had the sense. He had common sense enough to pull himself off the WrestleMania card and go home. Somebody who has battled leukemia 2 different times in his life should not be traveling to work, probably, right, during a pandemic. The fact that WWE did not have enough sense to tell him to stay home, or even if you want to look at it selfishly, right? Here's the guy they were going to crown as their new champion at WrestleMania. He's clearly the kind of new face of the company. It's not John Cena anymore. It's Roman Reigns. He's the face of the company now. He's the face of this roster, of this brand. He's their biggest star. You would think they would want to selfishly protect their investment, if nothing else. Look, I'm sure they don't want him to get sick. I mean, they care about him, I'm sure, on a personal level. I'm not saying they're a bunch of monsters. But if you want to be cynical about it and look at it even from a pure greed perspective, why would you want to take somebody like that you've invested so much in? You know he's been sick. You know he just came back not too long ago from his second bout with cancer. Why would you not step in and say, listen, this is not a good idea. We can see this is getting worse. This is getting bad. Like mid-March, you could see where this was going. Don't wait until the last minute. Don't force Roman to be the one to come to you 2 days before and make the call for you. The fact they didn't step in and make the call for him says a lot about WWE. So now he's home. There's no telling when we're going to see Roman Reigns back on TV again. It could be months before he feels that it's safe enough for him to go back to work. WWE has told talents that if they don't feel comfortable working these shows, they won't have it held against them. You're not going to have heat. You're not going to be buried. You're not going to lose your push. We heard this weeks ago. Now would be a good time for a whole bunch of them to stand up and say, you know what? Fuck this. We're going home. It doesn't help if you have 1 or 2 people doing it. You need everybody. You need a whole bunch of them to stand up and go, yeah, you know what? This is bullshit. We're out of here. We're going back home to our families. Because think about it. Without wrestlers, there's no wrestling show. That would send a message loud and clear. Is that going to happen? Of course not. But that would be one way for them. If all these people really are shocked and there are people in the company who, don't like the work environment, then do something about it. You can go, anonymously leak things to websites if you want to, but that ain't going to do shit. If that's how you really feel, then get together, talk about it, and stand up and do something about it.